First Nephi chapter 20 is the first of the so-called Isaiah chapters in the Book of Mormon. These are chapters where Nephi and sometimes other prophets in the Book of Mormon quote Isaiah, and there's lots of them in the Book of Mormon, and there's some minor differences. So for example, in this very first chapter of the Isaiah chapters, in the first verse says, "Hearken and hear this, O house of Jacob, who are called by the name of Israel, and come forth out of the waters of Judah, or out of the waters of baptism, who swear by the name of the Lord, and make mention of the God of Israel, yet they swear not in truth, nor in righteousness." So this is very similar to Isaiah 48, the first verse in Isaiah chapter 48, except they don't have the out of the waters of baptism. So the Book of Mormon adds that phrase, or out of the waters of baptism. And it kind of equates baptized members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to the children of Israel. And it's one of the verses where essentially you get the idea of adoption into the children of Israel, that as you join the church, you become one of God's chosen people who will fulfill the Abrahamic covenant of blessing the whole earth. And so it equates baptized members of the children of Israel. Interestingly, however, it's not saying, yeah, you guys are awesome. It's the beginning of Isaiah calling them out for talking about God, making mention of the God of Israel, but not being truthful and not acting righteously, not letting God change their hearts. And I think that that's a common theme in all the scriptures, that you might technically be a member of God's chosen people, but you're not, that you have problems if you haven't chosen God, if you haven't let God change your heart and you're just paying lip service to it. Anyways, I actually love the Isaiah chapters. There's an old joke where a bunch of soldiers, Latter-day Saint soldiers, are fighting in a war, and one of them gets shot in the chest, and everyone thinks he's dead, but then he pops up, he takes the Book of Mormon out of his pocket and his little army edition of the Book of Mormon, he says, "Wow, those Isaiah chapters, nothing can really get through them." And it's just a quote of how hard it is to read through the Book of Mormon when you get to the Isaiah chapters. But I actually really like them the more that I've studied them, and yeah, I'm happy for them. I'm glad they're in there.